There are many ways to communicate, but for simplicity we'll use the word sound for any clearly distinguishable smallest unit of communication. The common language of a universe is the language used on the Devastator to conduct official business, although it only has an official status in the imperial law for a couple of strictly defined uses. The common language of the universe means at the same time a language as well as any numeral system where each number has been chosen to represent a sound. There are 32 letters, 2 to the power of 5, so for example a species that can produce 2 different sounds will use a base 2 numeral system requiring 5 sounds per letter. In reality, very few entities have learned this language or can even pronounce words in it, perhaps apart from their acquaintances' names. Almost all of those who can speak it fluently are high-ranking officers. Usually entities use their species' own languages on the Devastator. Well-known names in the common language of the universe, as they are written in the Latin script, are MikkoMMM and MikkoMMM. For those who insist on learning this language, here is a pronunciation guide intended for humans. In the first column is a letter used for that sound. The second column is intended for a species that can only produce 2 sounds. The third column is for species that can produce 3 sounds, and so on. Those species that can produce 6 to 31 sounds will use the same map of sounds as those that can produce 5 sounds, and those species that can produce at least 32 sounds will use only 1 sound per letter. The third from last column is an example of a simplified version for human pronunciation, where each letter is comprised of 2 sounds. The second from last column is the letter in a human pronounceable international phonetic alphabet format, and the last column is the name of the IBA sound. A letter always has to be preceded by a vowel or a pause for species that can produce less than 32 sounds, or a pause for species that can produce at least 32 sounds. A pause isn't necessary if the previous letter's last sound and the next letter's first sound are different. The sound when starting a sentence. R. Vowels as per human pronunciation. A, O, E, U, I, U, O, Ä, Ö, U. Consonants as per human pronunciation. B, B, T, D, F, V, D, G, K, L, N, M, P, R, S, Sh. A human could therefore pronounce MikkoMMM, for example, like this, MikkoMMM, where spaces represent pauses, or with the simplified map of sounds, Eva, Jepe, Pa, Le, Vev. And now for some grammar. The language is based on predicate logic, and each letter can only have one way to pronounce it. The syntax of the language is unambiguous. The first letter is reserved for ending a sentence. A sentence isn't over until the first letter in the speaking entity's map of sounds has been pronounced. At the beginning of a conversation, it is mandatory according to the grammar to list in order the 32 sounds the speaking entity can pronounce, or if the entity cannot pronounce that many sounds, it has to list as many sounds as it can pronounce. After this, it has to pronounce the first sound again. This can be automated when both of the participants have a computer program that sends the sounds used to the other participant's program and receives the sounds the other participant uses. This computer program is distributed to every crew member of the Devastator, where there are too many languages to learn even the languages of those who live nearby, and it can be installed in pretty much any computer-like device. Naturally, in order to work, it has to have a connection to observation equipment somewhere nearby, probably embedded in the device itself or using the entity's own sensory system. These kinds of devices are distributed in many types suiting the needs of many different species. The program can also distinguish the different sounds and translate the communication in such a format that the receiver can understand it. This guarantees there will be no misunderstandings between the participants in a conversation if a participant has an insufficient sensory system. One feature in the program is localization of different things, one of the more important of these being the numeral system, because there is no common numeral system for all of the species on the Devastator.